Hello, Wisconsin! It sounds a lot better from that 70s show, if I'm being honest. Just heard it so many times that it's just ingrained in my mind. So, anyway, that 90s show is a sequel spin off of that 70s show, this time around taking place about 15 years after the events of that 70s show. Eric and Donna visits Red and Kitty with their new daughter, Leia. She's now grown up, she's now a teenager. And when she meets a bunch of new people in Point Place, she decides she wants to spend the summer in Point Place, getting to know her new friends, getting to know her grandparents, and chaos ensues in the 90s. So so that 70s show it has a special place to me. It may not be the best show ever, but to me, I enjoy the characters, I enjoy the jokes, I enjoy the storylines. I kind of like how there's always a fun storyline with either the kids or the adults in the show. And I feel like it doesn't necessarily need to take place in the 70s, but I do think the 70s aesthetic works for the show overall. So when I heard there was a new that 70s show, kind of, but it was going to be in the 90s, that was a spin off of that 70s show, I was intrigued, especially considering that it actually had characters from that 70s show who are a little bit older, see what their lives are like now after the 70s. And so I remember being really excited for the show. And unfortunately, I don't love this show as much as I would like to. It's not terrible by any means, but I just feel like a lot of the stuff really falls flat in my opinion. But is there anything that does work? Well, a lot of the actors do a really good job, particularly Deborah Jo Rupp and Kurtwood Smith, who return as Kitty and Red in the show. They were so great together on that 70s show. And here, while it's not quite as good, I love seeing them again. They have such great chemistry. I just love seeing the two of them. And as far as like any of the new characters go, we have Kaylee Herrera, who plays Leia Foreman, Eric and Donna's daughter. She does an all right job. Also, Mace Carone, who plays Jay Kelso, I thought he did an all right job for at least a few episodes. Kind of like this whole thing at first, but which I'm going to talk about later, where he's Kelso's kid, but at the same time, he's not as quite of a ladies' man as Kelso, and I thought that was kind of funny. I was kind of waiting to see where they were going to go with that. And the chemistry between the two of them, both Jay and Leia, it's cute. It's fine. It's not quite as good as the chemistry between Eric and Donna, or really any other characters, unfortunately. But it's cute enough. As far as the other actors goes, Rayan Doi, who plays essentially the new Fez of the show, which I'll talk about later too. I thought he was the only character who actually had some sort of character. He had some sort of arc, and not necessarily an arc, but like he at least had personality. And I thought he was really funny. I thought he did a really good job. And as far as like a bunch of the other new players go, Andrea Anders plays pretty much the new Bob of the show. She's the new neighbor of Red and Kitty, and she's the mom of a couple of the kids in the show. And I thought she did a really good job too. Anytime she came on screen, I thought she did a great job. And I kind of wish that if that 90s show is renewed for a second season, I hope she gets a. I hope she's like promoted to main cast member. I thought she was really good. I thought she really held her own against Kitty and Red. She was really good as well. And it was just nice to see some of the older cast members like Tommy Chong, Laura Prepon, Wilmer Valderrama again. It was fun to see, even though they're not quite in it as much. I also kind of like the fact that the show didn't just blatantly follow the original show. While there are definitely homages to that 70s show, obviously, it kind of takes it a new route. Like they have a similar plot in the first episode to one of the earliest episodes of that 70s show involving a keg, and the way they did it is actually pretty funny. And I do like that it does follow similar plot lines of shows from the 90s, like, going to a mall and trying to find, like, someone to kiss and just trying to do stuff in the 90s, like have a rave. And thought it worked for the most part. Also, I do like what they kind of do with some of the characters in the show, particularly Bob. He has a fun one episode arc. Leo doesn't really have an arc, unfortunately, but he does make a couple appearances, and I'm like, normally I would be upset, but at the same time, I feel like Leo doesn't really need an arc. He just needs to be Leo. He's just going to be wandering around, just kind of hanging around, and it was just fun to see Tommy Chong again. And Fez is probably the only person from the original group who has some sort of arc in this season, which I won't go into. But I thought it was definitely surprising for him. But overall, I would say I did laugh. I don't laugh as much as I did during that 70s show, but then again, that 70s show had, has 8 seasons, most of which are good. But I did laugh a few times in each episode, so that gives it something at least. So, what don't I like about the show? Well, the use of the original cast members, particularly Kelso, Jackie, and Eric. they only appear in the first episode, and they don't really do anything much. Eric kind of has a moment where he's basically becoming red for a moment in the first episode, and then he's gone for the rest of the season. It kind of doesn't make sense when in the finale he's not there, or at least another point when he's not there. And Kelso and Jackie were just kind of wasted, and also just doesn't really make sense why they're together in this show, except for the fact that, Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher are married in real life. It really doesn't make sense. And also what I don't really like is that I feel like these kids are not really living in the 90s. Like, I look at the main gang from that 70s show, and I feel like they are people from the 70s who grew up in the 70s, who were teenagers in the 70s. Here, it just feels like people who kind of are trying to act like they're from the 90s, and yet it just doesn't really work. It's not like it's like cringy or anything, but I just don't believe it enough. And that's also my main issue, is that the main group is just not nearly as interesting. They kind of have like roles to play. Like at one point, it's like, but they also can't really decide what kind of roles they're playing, except for, again, Rayan Doi. Again, I'm probably mispronouncing that name. I apologize. He at least he's essentially going to be Fez for the 90s, which it works for him. But Leia's supposed to be the new Eric. Jay's supposed to be the new Kelso. Or again, it's really confusing because there's a girl, Nikki. She's supposed to be the new Jackie, but at times she's kind of the new Hyde, and it never really works. Also, they have two characters, Nate and Jay, who are kind of supposed to be the new Kelso, and again, it just doesn't really work. Again, I don't mind if they like have different characters with different archetypes, but like if you're just gonna try to copy and not really go through with one of them, then what's the point? It's like you're just trying to figure out who they are and just don't know what they are just yet. And also, there were a lot of plot holes that I just did not really understand. Like in the show, Kelso at one point moved away from Point Place and took a job in Chicago. In this show, he's back living in Point Place with Jackie. And there's just a lot of gaps in there, and I just don't understand like how and why this happened. Also, Eric and Donna are the ones who are living in Chicago instead of Kelso. Again, when did this happen? I feel like that needs to be explained a bit. And also, there's this whole subplot involving a girlfriend of one of the main characters. She just disappears. She's never brought up again. I don't know why they didn't do that. I don't know why they just had her for like 1 or 2 episodes and then was just completely gone. And then there was the twist in the finale, which comes out of nowhere, in my opinion. Like, I couldn't predict the twist because there was no clues to predict that twist. Normally, I like it when I go back and watch something, I'm like, oh, I didn't notice this. Oh, I didn't notice this. I didn't notice this, and so it leads to this. It would make a lot of sense. Here, I didn't notice anything regarding this twist, and I won't spoil it, but it just kind of left me annoyed and just kind of just upset with everyone in the show, and I don't know how they're going to come back from that. And overall, I will say that looking back on that 70s show, season 1 wasn't my favorite. It had a lot of slow moments, but there are definitely shades of like what it was trying to be and what it was eventually going to be in like season 2 and so on. So I hope that if that 90s show is renewed for a second season, it will definitely be better. I hope it's better. So if this is like a test run, and if they do come back and hopefully kind of develop a lot of these characters and try to fix some of these storylines, I would probably be a lot more interested in this show. So that 90s show, I'll give it 2.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. It's worth watching, especially if you're a fan of that 70s show, but if you're not, then maybe don't watch it. So, what'd you think of that 90s show? Also, what's your favorite sitcom? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.